Hello and welcome to the HP Podcast, episode number 267, if my numbering is correct, which is a very big if. I'm going to tell you, boys, right now. Coming here with me, starting with Davey. Hello, sir. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good, Sir Ben. I'm driving a rental vehicle right now.
Right this
Not
moment?
like at this moment, but like, the car I'm driving is a rental.
Yeah.
We had a little love tap at a shopping mall,
Okay.
and so the car's in a body shop getting fixed. And
When did that happen?
it happened in like January.
Oh, okay.
And no one left a note. And when my wife first called me, she's like, "Someone hit our car." I'm like, "Oh, it happens. It's part of owning a car." But the more time I've sunken into getting this thing fixed, the more I've wanted to wring the person's neck who did this.
Sure.
And you go through insurance, so it doesn't really cost you anything other than a deductible, but it's still very annoying. So if you hit someone in a parking lot, leave a fucking note.
Or anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a parking lot.
Yeah. So we're driving a rental, and it's funny. It's a Chevrolet Trailblazer, and I'm aware of this car, and I'm aware of the cars that are like it. There's like the Chevy Trax, and then there's the Equinox. And I feel like since I got in this car yesterday, all I have seen on the road are other Chevy SUVs. It's like, in GTA when you get in that car that you've been looking for hours, and then suddenly all the other cars are, I know it's like a Ram trick or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's been just like that. So
Yeah. I feel like every time I've ever either rented a car or gotten a new car or somebody in my family has gotten a new car, then all I see, like, I'm like, oh, that's dad. Oh, no, that's not dad. That's somebody who has his exact same car.
Exactly.
It's pretty much constant. Brandon, it's been a little while since you got a new car, but your last car, I used to see it everywhere.
Yeah, it's an affordable car, and so I feel like that's why most people bought it. But my car currently is like the least conspicuous car of all time. It's a silver SUV in a place where silver SUVs are like a paramount in the snow. So my car is everywhere, and it's almost always an old lady. So
Really?
yeah,
I've not noticed that. Yeah.
That's what I've seen. I mean, maybe it's just me.
The Subi Nation down here or up here in Western Pennsylvania.
Right.
You got a rocket. You got the combination of the ever popular Subaru in the Western Pennsylvania environment, combined with I really would have expected more soccer moms to be driving an SUV, but I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Mixed with a Ginger that, man, that's incredible.
And the lady that owned my car. No, go ahead.
When I first started to get in the market to buy my first car, I had this strategy, and I spent a lot of time looking for a car, but I had this strategy where like I would look at people driving the car, and I try to ascertain just by looking at them if they were happy driving. So like if I was interested in a Golf, I'd look for Golfs out on the road, and I'd kind of look and see, like, do these people look happy? And there was another car that I'm not going to name that I was interested in, and I saw someone driving it, but they were crying. So then I stopped looking for that car.
Name it, motherfucker. Is it a Kia Soul?
It was a Kia Soul. It was a
Kia Soul.
I knew it was a Kia Soul.
Are you serious?
I was vaguely interested in the Kia Soul because when it came out, it was an interesting car, and I thought I would enjoy something like that. It was kind of hip, interesting. It's got a bit more space for people. Even though if you have a Kia Soul, you don't have friends, so you don't need the other 3 seats. But
correct, yeah.
Maybe if you're a hamster.
I'm blown away that you got that right off.
It's the obvious choice. It was either that or a PT Cruiser.
Listen,
like
the only thing that I could imagine that you would feel any shame about whatsoever that's a modern car would be that. So, hey, I aim to please.
I had a Kia one time. I bought a Kia. I bought it. My in-laws called it, or my mother-in-law specifically called it Dimples, because I bought it at this car lot, and the guy who worked at the car lot owned it, and so he turned it over to the car lot to sell it through them. I don't know, something, but it was hail damaged. The car was perfect otherwise, had 50,000 miles on it when I got it, but it was hail damaged, so they couldn't. And I was like, I don't care what it looks like. There's no broken paint. It was fine, but that engine blew up on me twice. I will never buy another Kia. I know that not all Kias are the same, not all engines are the same, whatever, but the fact that my Kia engine blew up on me twice, I should have known better after it blew up the first time. But maybe it was, I don't know.
Bad luck.
Could have been bad luck.
Very bad luck.
This is the HP Podcast. We're a show about video games. We come to you live here on Twitter, YouTube, every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. You can also listen, as many of you may be. We know many more of you are listening than watching, over on the podcast feeds. You can get that every Thursday morning, unless you're a patron, which you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month over at patreon.com/Handsome Phantom. We appreciate it. Little as $1 a month gets you ad-free early access to the show, to the audio feeds, and of course, feel free to join us here on the video as well. I'm looking at the numbers, which I don't often do, in the top left of the screen. It says we have currently 57 viewers. That's not insane, but it's way more than we normally have, and a lot of them look like they're coming from Twitter. I don't really understand what's going on.
Welcome.
Don't know what's going on. But hello, if you're actually out there, the Twitter views sometimes seem to be a little bit inflated. Hello, greetings, welcome. Thanks for coming on in to the show. We appreciate it. We're a show about video games. You can also hang out with us on Discord over at handsomephantom.com/Discord. We talk about a variety of things. Sometimes they're related to video games, sometimes they're not. Most of the time they're mocking Dave for playing Skull and Bones, which I'm sure we'll be speaking about a little bit later. But first,
He resents that.
yeah. Before we get into the discussion about the video games, let's talk about Brandon's favorite topic. Well, I guess this is about video games. Brandon's favorite topic has to do with Nintendo,
No, man.
but not really. Number one, Nintendo recently sued Tropic Haze LLC, developers of the Yuzu emulator, for enabling piracy on a large scale. Those were their words. In a joint filing, Tropic Haze agreed to pay Nintendo $2.4 million and cease all Yuzu-related activities. For those, I didn't really explain it here, but Yuzu is an emulator that emulates the Switch, mostly used on PC, can be used on Steam Deck, other handheld devices. This includes surrendering the Yuzu-emu.org domain, deleting copies of Yuzu and related tools, and discontinuing support for Citra, a Nintendo 3DS emulator. Tropic Haze cited concerns over piracy and pledged to take action against it. Of course, I think the statement they put out was actually written by Nintendo lawyers, but we can talk about that later. The settlement is pending court approval, and while Yuzu's source code has been removed from GitHub, its impact on other emulators remains uncertain. Legal experts suggest that while the settlement sets an example, it may not establish a legal precedent. Brandon, I'm going to do you the honor of going to you first, because none of us here are proponents of piracy.
No.
But you specifically are not a proponent of Nintendo. And I want to hear your take on the whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, my problem is not necessarily that Nintendo does not want piracy of their things. I can understand the drive for Nintendo as a company to want to get the profit from what they've made. But my problem with this entire situation is that some, not all, some of the things that this company has made available for people to download is not accessible any other way natively, unless you had it then or you pay an exorbitant secondhand rate. And that is what my complaint with it is. And just, truly, Nintendo's been the big bad man. They strike you on YouTube for having figurines in the background or, making a positive review about their video, spreading the word. But this isn't something that's uncommon for Nintendo to act like, but this specifically is frustrating for me for the reasons I outlined. If you're not going to make things you've made easily available for people to purchase, how else do you expect them to play them?
Yeah.
And that's really where I don't know. We've talked a lot about preserving this medium, and I feel like Nintendo has been one of the biggest offenders of many because a lot of the medium is being lost as we speak. But Nintendo specifically seems like they pick and choose when they want things to be available, and the other things, they are radio silent. I mean, am I wrong here, boys? It sucks to see. I mean, I get why this is happening, but I don't know. I'm not a fan of Nintendo either way, but
Yeah.
This is frustrating for someone who cares about the preservation of video games, ones that aren't even 20 years old. I'm not talking about things that were made in the early 2000s or something necessarily. We're talking about things that are relatively newer that, sometimes people can't play these. And
Yeah.
what other choice do they have? It's like, would you rather people not be able to play your thing because you don't make it available to them? I guess that's what they're saying, is they would rather have people not play their games if they're getting them through any other means other than Nintendo, even
Yeah.
if they're not making them available. So that's kind of my complaint with it. I don't like it, man. I don't like it whatsoever. If you're
Yeah.
going to bitch about this, if you're going to sue, put your money where your mouth is. Just start selling the shit they're making piratable. But they won't, because it's Nintendo. So
Right.
yeah, it's just
Dave, I wanted to get your take on it as well, and I know you're really interested right now in specifically GameCube games, but we're all kind of interested in classic games to an extent. But I wanted to take this, and you can take it whatever direction you want, but take it more in the aspect of less about piracy and more about just emulation in general. Because my contention with this, and I'll elaborate later, is was Yuzu used to pirate or to play games that were pirated from Nintendo? Specifically, they cited Tears of the Kingdom, over 1 million downloads the week before it released or something like that. But Yuzu doesn't facilitate that. So should the car manufacturer be responsible for the drunk driver is kind of my analogy there.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing about this arena that we're in is, from what I understand, developing an emulator is not illegal. And you ended the the report that you read by saying that this won't make legal precedents, and I kind of wonder, like, what will make these legal precedent? Because if being an accessory to a murder is a thing, then this is as close to being an accessory to a crime as possible. And I've been kind of surprised reading some of the discourse about how many people are fuck Nintendo in this story, because it's people are stealing this product, and I think it's a little naive to think that if Nintendo suddenly made all of their old games and the games that people are yearning for easier to play natively, I don't think that would solve their emulation problem. If you dig a little deeper, it seems like the reason why Yuzu was kind of had a target on their back is because their emulation tool allowed, among others, allowed for the emulation of modern games. We're talking about Switch games, and emulation of N64 and SNES games have always been a thing, but it seems like that was the straw that kind of broke the camel's back. Like, if you want to take the risk of muddying the waters with emulation, like, do it with old stuff, but once you touch some of the new stuff, then that's when Nintendo is going to come after you. And I wonder, this is stealing. It's piracy. It shouldn't be a thing. And I get, Brandon, your sentiment about not having those games available to consumers, but like, at what point does Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, just as an example, kind of band together and find a way to make it so the same ramifications are felt for people who were getting arrested and heavy fines for pirating music and movies 10 years ago happened with video games? So I'm kind of on Nintendo's side here, and I'm not trying to be a shill or anything, but I don't understand how this is legal and how this is still sort of a gray area, because it's clearly piracy. And again, I guess what Yuzu is doing isn't actually pirating the games, but they're certainly helping. So
Yeah.
I would like to see more done about this, because this kills profit generation in an industry that we all love, and that ultimately trickles down to the smallest developers. So yeah, I'm not crazy about where this is going, but I don't know. It is what it is. What are your thoughts, Ben?
My thoughts are mixed, because I'm not a fan of piracy. No, I don't think most people would say they're a fan of piracy. Now, have most people or many people at some point in their lives pirated something? Most likely, myself included. I'm not saying that's a current day practice for me. I'm just saying, it's happened. Kazaa and LimeWire were big parts of my childhood. That's not, I'm not going to pretend like it wasn't. Yeah, we were there. Yeah. But the thing about it is Yuzu as a company or a product or whatever, Tropic Haze Labs or whatever the name of it was, what they created was an emulator. And here are the very brass tacks for me. They created an emulator that could emulate a modern system. They also had an older system that you could emulate with the 3DS. And my understanding, as it stands, is that it is legal if you own the game to emulate the game, to dump the ROMs from your own cartridge and to play the game in an emulated state if you like. And for me, for Nintendo to walk in, sue them, bully them, because they knew full well that they weren't going to be able to withstand a lawsuit from Nintendo, get them to shut down without ever going to court, and therefore not reinforcing the legal standpoint of emulation as legal, that's a big problem for me. Because the reality is, the emulation of the things is legal. The people who got the early copies of Tears of the Kingdom and every other game that comes out for the Switch or whatever, made it possible for people to be able to download it and play it on Yuzu. Again, I'm going to go back to that same analogy. That's like the car manufacturer getting sued for the drunk driver.
Or even like even for the person that sells the person alcohol. Now, could there be some legal grounds in that specific scenario I just mentioned? Yes, but most of the time there's not.
Right.
Because most of the time the person is not drunk in this analogy when they buy the stuff. So the individual ultimately should be responsible for their actions. And I think that's kind of what you're outlining, Ben.
That's exactly what I'm outlining. The individual should be responsible for it. Now, the really fascinating thing about this to me is okay. So let me start back a little bit. If Yuzu had came out and been like, "Hey, we have this product, and our product is available. It is compatible with the Tears of the Kingdom RIP that came out, whatever it was called, and you can play it with our system, but you have to go find it elsewhere, and we're not going to give it to you." Even then, I can understand, like, if that was a marketing technique for them, that they have a little bit more liability. But to the best of my ability to tell, and I am not a trained law professional in any sense of the word, I don't understand how someone who is creating a legal product and distributing it legally is able to be shut down, or would have been able to be shut down in a court of law. I think this really is just a case of they knew they couldn't withstand however many years of litigation and millions of dollars and potential fines and whatever else. So they had no choice but to shut down. So that's my whole problem with it, is not that I think, people should be able to do whatever they want and pirate games and play them whatever. I have some points about that as well, but it's that they shouldn't have been forced to shut down. There was no legal standing for it, in my opinion. It's just Nintendo being a bully. The other thing is that now we're getting into the more hypotheticals and the more anecdotals, but there is no precedent to say that 1 million people would have bought our game that pirated it instead. I know people personally who pirated Tears of the Kingdom and then bought it anyway. And I know plenty of people, and there are many internet types that I've encountered as well through message boards or Discord or whatever, that they're just pirates. If a game's not available to be pirated, they're not going to play it. They're not going to buy it. If it's got de novo, which makes it basically impossible to crack for the ability to pirate it, then they're just not going to play that game. And I'm not saying that means you should just let people pirate your games. I'm just saying, making the case that we lost $70 million because of this company, I don't think that's really a valid case. But again, that's more in the hypothetical realm. My real point is that emulation is legal. Yuzu was creating an emulator, and they got bullied into settling and shutting down. And that's, they could have been in 10 years that you could have looked back and been like, wow, all these old Switch games you can't get anymore. Hey, by the way, Mario 35 or whatever it was called that came out like 2 years ago, you can't even buy that physically or digitally anymore unless you want to pay aftermarket markup prices for it.
Right.
Again, I'm not saying you should be allowed to just pirate and take whatever you want. But I am saying that if emulation is not illegal, then Yuzu should still be in business. And by the way, they're probably just fine. I mean, I don't know about the $2.4 million, but they had a Patreon going that was like making $30,000 a month. That's pretty good money, I think, for a mostly solo developer, it seemed. So, I don't know. Those are my basic overall thoughts, and I'm sure there's some holes with them, but feel free to comment or push back or whatever.
No, I'm in agreement with you, Ben. I think that I'm just in agreement with you. Piracy isn't right, but emulating is not a crime. And I think that's really the takeaway. So, and would any other company go as hard after this company? I don't know. You could make a case to say that and this would be perfectly reasonable to say, is that the reason that they lost all this money was not because of this company. It was because of people pirating their game, which is factual. And maybe not always, like you said, Ben. Maybe people do buy the game, but
Lost what money?
the money they didn't have.
I'm just saying, like, they're suing for a loss of a. It'd be one thing if someone came in and stole 1 million copies of the game from their warehouse. You knew those copies were going to go out and be sold to people, but I don't know. I'm not making a good case for piracy. I'm not saying that it should be legal. I'm just saying that to claim those as damages is unlikely that you could ever prove that those people were actually going to purchase the game.
Yeah, it's just difficult to hold up, man. That's all.
Yeah. My next question is, when are they going to come for the others? There's so many other emulator companies out there, and there's a bunch of people you don't even need emulators for some games. The PC games, there are websites where you can go to it, download a file, unpack it, and click play, and you play the game. You don't even have to have an emulator. Well, that's scary stuff.
I guess that's also part of the problem with something like this happening, is that when does the ball stop rolling down the hill almost?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, whenever you I don't want to say bully, but I mean, whenever you strong arm companies into doing things that they wouldn't otherwise do because you're concerned with your profit when they're not doing anything illegal, it's just how many other companies might be strong armed that have had no responsibility for these claimed losses.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what kind of concerns me, is that when these big companies start tossing around the money, it's just hard to fight back. It really is, for almost anybody. The only kind of battles that are like this that are worth watching are the ones from the companies fighting the other companies, because they're the only ones that can actually fight back. So,
yeah. Agreed.
The big companies, I mean.
Right. And I just want to we've said it 1,000 times, crystal clear. I'm not saying piracy is okay. I'm saying if emulation's legal and all they were doing was making an emulator, there was no legal case for them to be shut down. And that's why they settled. They settled because they couldn't afford a long, drawn-out battle, and Nintendo only sued them because they knew they wouldn't take it to court and prove them wrong. So, number 2. God, I'm so worked up about this. I've never even used Yuzu. I've never even seen the interface, but I'm like, kind of want to go find it and download it now just to spite them. Just to spite her face, as Michael Scott would say. Last week, the Helldivers 2 Discord community sounded an alarm about imposters, threatening the integrity of Super Earth. Several games on Steam, including Palworld, Last Epic, and Escape from Tarkov, were targeted by scammers who changed their names to various names like Whitehole... I'm sorry, I messed that up. Changed their names to Helldivers 2, altering their Steam pages to appear legitimate. The method and timing of these changes suggest a coordinated effort by a single organization. These fake developers, using various names like Whitehole Games, Glamoury, Fest Studios, All Bobs, and B-Side Studio, engaged in the scam, creating convincing but fraudulent Steam pages. Despite the removal of the fake games, the scammers' other titles remain available for sale, raising concerns about Steam's quality control and discoverability. The ease with which these phony studios impersonated legitimate ones highlights the lack of scrutiny in the platform's vetting process. Now, I have a little bit of experience with Steam's backend as a developer, which I will allude to, or I will talk about the parts of it I can talk about in a little bit. But Dave, this sucks. How many people got scammed? I'm sure they refunded them, but how many people got scammed?
Too many. One too many. Helldivers can't seem to catch a break. I know this isn't directly their fault or within their control, but I think it's just scammers doing what they always do, ruining a good situation and making making a killing off of something that's popular. So this sucks. It really sucks, and I'm really hoping that the tides start to turn for this Helldivers story, because as much as people are loving the game, it's just been like bad story after bad story, and I don't know. This obviously has exposed a pretty massive vulnerability in Steam, and it's something that Valve needs to address quickly. And it's funny you brought that up, Ben. It was your experience with this type of work is the first thing I thought of. So I'm curious to see what you have to say about how that process actually works. But if somebody can actually go in, make a fake page as easily as these people have done, and accept, this is the crazy part, accept payments and you know, predictably withhold those payments without Valve catching it is beyond me. It's absolutely beyond me. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about why, Ben or Brandon, you would choose to purchase a game on Epic over Steam. If it was the exact same game, why would you pick one over the other? And obviously price is a big one, but security, that's a big one. If somebody can go in and make a fake page and accept payment like this, what is stopping somebody from getting everybody's personal data, payment information, that kind of stuff? So
Right.
this is a scary situation for, I know it looks like a bad thing for Helldivers, but this is really bad for Steam, and it's something they're going to have to address as quickly as humanly possible, because the implications of this go so far deeper than just making fake pages. So yeah, I don't know. Steam's got to sort their shit out, because this is a scary situation that they're in right now, and it's not good for customers. How do you even tell these pages apart? I mean, were there big giveaways between, you know, the real Helldivers 2 page and the fake one, or did you have to look really hard?
Yeah, I didn't see them when they were live. I saw some screenshots after the fact, but
Yeah, I saw some grabs. I think that if you were just going in like any layman, I think would have not been able to notice. You know, you look at the developer name and it's not the right one, stuff like that. The pictures were the same, the titles were the same. So I can understand why people would have got fooled. But you're exactly right, Dave. I mean, this is just truly a net negative for the entire ecosystem of Steam, really. And typically, my biggest complaint with these platform and these game holders is things like shovelware, because it's rampant. I mean, every mobile and PlayStation and Xbox, we have just junk on here. But this takes it a step above even just junk. Like, this is just fraudulent behavior, and really concerning. I mean, I don't think at all this puts a negative mark on Helldivers as a game, but obviously more Steam. And you know, I just feel bad for anybody that.
If anything, it's positive for Helldivers.
Well, that, you know, honestly, Ben, that's kind of what I was thinking. You know, getting some press. You know, I guess any press is good press most of the time, but yeah, Gabe's got to get this shit. You know, like, Gabe's got to figure this shit out, man. Like, I know he's Mr. Moneybags, he's Mr. Scrooge McDuck up there, just being a G. But he's got to get this shit worked out, man, because this is not okay. And this is the first. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, boys. This is the first time I've personally heard of something this egregious happening.
It's
Now,
happened before. Nothing crazy like this, but
I'm sure that oftentimes there are copycats. We talked about The Last of Us copycat on the PlayStation. Most of the time, people aren't as blatant as this Helldivers was. They don't literally just copy paste image and title, but this is just like a new level of bad that I didn't think anyone would have the balls to just straight up snake oil salesman this shit, but they literally did. It's just a veil of smoke, pretty much. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I genuinely hope that. Oh, and you know, I'm going to go back to one more thing. This developer, if their other games are still up, like, there has to be punishment. There has to be punishment. If this IP, I don't know how Steam categorizes it. Maybe Ben, maybe you have a little bit more experience with this, but wherever these games are coming from, there has to be some sort of way to, like, stop all of this. And if they put anything else out, I mean, I feel like there really should be punishments for this blatant scam. Ben, thoughts?
I got a lot of thoughts on this. I'll start with the very practical ones first. One, the person or people who did this, what did they think was going to happen? Like, they thought that they could just get a bunch of money from people. The people load in and load up a press X to win game, and they were going to get all their money, and nobody was ever going to say anything.
Ben, do you know what they thought? They thought they were going to be the next day before. That's exactly what, you know, but the fucking skip town.
Yeah.
Skip town, you know, like,
I don't know, because you don't get your payouts from Steam for a little while after you get, you know, sell the game. You can basically refund anything on Steam as long as you haven't played it for over 2 hours. The reality is that even if you got a payout, if you somehow managed to squeak by for the 2 weeks or whatever it is it takes, or maybe it's 30 days to get your payouts, then Steam could charge it back. Like, I just don't understand practically what people were thinking, other than just a trolling attempt. And if they have other games on the platform already, then they were probably trying to be legitimate at one point and then just saw an opportunity to cash in. I don't know. I don't really get it. Two, Dave, to your point, I will say that maybe there is a loophole somewhere, but as a developer who publishes on Steam, you don't get any personal information or anything from your players. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. But I'll say this next. When I go in, I handle all of our listings for Lilymo on Steam. Barry does stuff too, but I mean, I set them up typically and handle them. And when you want to submit a game to Steam, Steam really doesn't care what it is. It could be the worst game in the world. It could be full of, anime porn, or it could be like a really solid game.
Hold up. Why was the worst game of all time in that next statement you
said? There was a comma in there. Okay? There was a comma.
All right.
Mutually exclusive, Brandon.
It could be anything. I'm saying, like, Steam doesn't put it, like PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, they all have filters that, like, that you can't, this game sucks, you can't play it. This game isn't even playable, you can't put it up there. Steam doesn't have that. But what they do have is you have to submit your title for approval. You have to go through and submit all your images, make sure they're formatted correctly. You got to put in a description. You got to upload the file for the game to get it to go through, like, clearing. And so let's say they did all of that with a legitimate game, and then they were like, we're just going to change this and mess with people. Well, guess what? When you want to change the title of a game, when you want to add in some pictures, there's a review process. Now, I don't think that it's completely automated because it takes a little while. But maybe parts of it are automated. If you're just changing some basic text in the Steam description, they probably don't care that much if you have a misspelling or whatever. But I don't even understand how, if you change the name of a game, it gets a manual review. And I don't understand how somebody at Steam, somebody at Valve, sitting there hanging out with Gabe playing poker, I don't understand how they were like, oh, wow, a bunch of games just came through and said they're Helldivers, or said they're Power World, or said they're whatever. And we're like, okay, approve. Like, how, that's the part I don't really understand.
Well, also, the first time when you originally create a game, which is what they did, is that automated? It's only a change that's manual.
Maybe it is in the back end, but it certainly doesn't appear like that from a developer point of view. Okay. It seems like there's someone actually checking it out, flagging stuff. Now, I'm sure that, like, if you submit an image and it's the wrong size, that's probably automated. But it seems like there's a manual review process from a developer point of view.
Well, but let's say most of it's manual. Okay, let's just say that. There has to
even
be
part of it's manual. Even part of it. That's what I'm getting at.
Even a fraction of it. Yeah. There has to be some sort of flag. Now, I don't have the exact listing in front of me, but if it is as I saw it when I saw it on Reddit and the image I saw was not doctored, there has to be some sort of flag process. Like, can you put out a game on Steam with the exact same? Let's say you're not trying to scam people, but let's say you put out a game. Now, you might get sued by Activision, but let's say you put out a game called Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 on Steam, but it's a different game. Wouldn't that flag in Steam if you literally put the same name?
I don't know, because there are multiple games of the same name that come out years apart.
That's fair. That's fair. But it's just.
I'm gonna make a game called Fortnite right now and put it on Steam. You guys,
dude, is it gonna be a zombie game?
No, it's just Flappy Bird. But people will buy it. I think I have a hunch that we'll be millionaires overnight.
It's actually about 2-week periods of time. It's a survival game.
Yeah, dude. Just call it press space to win V-Bucks, and everyone will buy it.
Oh, man. Make sure you put your creator code in there. Mine is Ben is Handsome, by the way, for everyone. But I just don't understand how this happens. I don't understand how Steam lets it happen. I don't understand how the developers of whatever this was that threw it in there thought it was a good idea, thought they were going to win anything out of it. Like, it's got to just be a troll attempt at this point. So, yeah, I don't know.
It just seems like a bad troll.
Yeah.
Which all trolls are bad.
There are some good trolls.
I ain't paying no troll toll, motherfucker. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Man, I'm really worked up on these first two stories.
Dude, they're upsetting.
Number 3. According to a Bloomberg report, Saber Interactive is set to be acquired by a group of private investors, transitioning the studio into private ownership. With approximately 3,500 employees across its global studios, including locations in the US, Russia, Portugal, Saber will continue its operations. The acquisition will not hinder the studio's work on the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake, a project previously announced in collaboration with Lucasfilm Games and Sony Interactive Entertainment. Despite challenges faced during development, the remake remains in progress, supposedly. Embracer Group, Saber's current owner, is currently undergoing significant restructuring efforts, including studio closures, which we've talked about in the past. The reported $500 million deal also offers Saber the opportunity to potentially bring along certain Embracer subsidiaries. Additionally, Saber recently unveiled its upcoming single-player action-adventure game, Jurassic Park Survival, set immediately after the events of the 1993 film. Now, boys, this is kind of in pair with our next story, which I think will be a bigger conversation. But Brandon, we talked about how much we hate Embracer gobbling up everything. Here's one escaping the clutches. It's getting out.
Dude, speaking of, we're talking about setting bad precedents earlier. We're setting a golden precedent now. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of money. But this is good. Somebody escaped the clutches, the gnarled fingers of
The
Embracer.
death spiral. Yeah.
Seriously, the death roll of Embracer. And this is just beautiful, boys. I do not necessarily think that KOTOR will ever see the light of day after the
I'm with you there.
hell that it has been through. And that's sad. That's sad. Even someone who's not a fan and has only played maybe an hour or two of it, period. But what this could mean, if they stay with Embracer, KOTOR will for sure 100% never see the light of day. If they leave, even if it's not likely, there is some possibility that we might get the KOTOR remake at some point, even if it's unlikely. So I think it's not happening at all any other way. And I'm glad to see that they are breaking the chains of big business. This is nothing but good. We have another story coming up that also just does my heart well. When I saw both of these stories today within a couple days of each other, it made me so fucking happy because for years now, we have been talking about these mega companies gobbling up the market. And for years now, 2 years, we have been talking about the absolute hellscape that has been the gaming industry and how these, it's not just EA anymore. It used to be fun to make fun of EA that they would just take everyone out and old yeller them in the backyard. But it's not just them anymore. It's every other mega corporation that gobbles up these companies. And so to see that Saber Interactive actually made it out, this is a win for everybody, especially Saber.
Dave, your take?
Yeah, this is I guess this goes back to the that $2 billion financing deal that Embracer had in place with some Saudi-backed fund that fell through, and this restructuring strategy is basically all the money that Embracer thought they had isn't there anymore. So this is one of them. The rumor is that Gearbox is the next one who's going to be gone, and apparently Randy Pitchford held like a company meeting and was basically saying we're either going to stay with Embracer, we're going to be sold, or we're going to try and buy ourselves. And rumor is that they are going to be sold soon. So this is not the last one that I think is going to escape the clutches of Embracer. So yeah, stay tuned. There's a few entities that are owned by Embracer that I hope also escape. Embracer, I think, currently owns the IP for Darksiders. That's a series that's been on ice for a little while that I really like to see come back. And Ghost Ship, who publishes our dearly beloved Deep Rock Galactic, is technically an Embracer product. So hopefully more good things to come. The value of this is kind of interesting. So it's 500 million. A few years ago, I was just reading here, Square Enix sold Eidos Montreal, Square Enix Montreal, and Crystal Dynamics for $300 million. So that's almost double what...
Along with some of their IP.
Exactly. And I'm kind of wondering if... as much as this is Embracer trying to save face, they did purchase Saber, a few years ago for $150 million. So they're coming out on top in this one. But I'm wondering like how much value it added for Saber picking up the contracts to develop, the KOTOR game and the Jurassic Park game really added to that value. But yeah, and it's an interesting thing. It's all good news, and I'll be curious to see what comes out of this next, because I think there's more to come in Gearbox. Maybe the next big one. Gearbox purchased in 2021 by Embracer for $1.3 billion. I really doubt that Gearbox has appreciated over that time. So as much as they gamed in the Saber deal, I think they are going to lose out a little bit on the Gearbox thing. But be really interesting to see where that number comes in at.
Ben, now I'm really wondering, as you're saying this sort of thing in kind of the buying and selling of studios, is it almost like Embracer can buy low and sell high these studios? Is that kind of the tactic? I'm not saying they're just like putting companies to bed, but like from a business standpoint, and as someone who has a much larger business insight than I do, is that kind of what we're seeing here? I mean, are we accumulating value, okay, in the IPs that we perceive to have value and the studios that we perceive to have value, and then we're keeping them for long enough for them to appreciate, and then we're dumping them? But that idea only works if someone's willing to buy them, and that's a point that Dave just made. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that that's been the actual strategy. I think, to Dave's point, they were expecting some more cash from the Saudis and didn't get it. And I think this is just a happy coincidence for them, at least with Saber, that they profited off of it. Now, there is, a practice that could be being performed where they're like, okay, we're going to buy this studio for $150 million. I'm just making up numbers here. They're buying it for $150 million. They put out a game. It doesn't sell super well, but they still make $10 million. They sell the studio for $200 million. They profit $600 million or $60 million. Again, just fake numbers here. That's not a bad business day,
Right.
if you're doing it that way. Do I think that was the plan? My gut would say no, because they've bought everyone, and certainly not everyone has made money. But
Right.
do I think that they're going to take those opportunities where they can? If they're smart, they are,
Especially
because
now.
they own too much and are too over leveraged, in my opinion, to be still gobbling and still keeping all these studios and funding them. Because remember, they might pay $150 million for Saber, but how much per year does it cost to keep them open?
Right.
Granted, it probably hasn't cost them an additional $350 million that they're selling,
Right.
that they're going to make off of the deal. But there's definitely some, and they trim some. I'm saying trim some fat. I'm not saying the layoffs have been fat, but of the studios they've purchased, they've also leaned them out some. So really, to some extent, that's more attractive to a buyer. When it costs less to keep a studio open, it's more attractive if you can trim off some of the additional expenses. Now, will the game suffer? That's yet to be seen.
Probably.
Most likely.
Yeah,
But,
probably.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, let's go ahead and get into a subject that's very similar to this, although with a different parent company. Number 4, Toys for Bob is going indie. Toys for Bob, known for Crash Bandicoot 4, amongst many other things, has announced its independence from Activision and Microsoft. Toys for Bob shared this development via a blog post expressing a desire to return to its roots as an indie developer. While this move may limit access to IPs like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, the studio remains optimistic. They're exploring a potential partnership with Microsoft, with support from both Microsoft and Activision. The transition comes amid challenges, including recent layoffs and studio closures, specifically under the Microsoft and Activision umbrella. While it's a significant shift for Toys for Bob, it may secure the studio's future. Founded in 1989, the studio has a rich history from Star Control to Skylanders and the Spyro Reignited trilogy. With this move, they're poised for a new chapter in game development. Now, a little bit of background here. I have a friend who works at another studio that is now owned by Microsoft. Used to be under Activision. I've known this person for, I don't know, a decade or more at this point, more than a decade at this point. And they told me in January that Toys for Bob was probably going to be shut down after the acquisition, which had happened previous to that. But we were just chit-chatting, and they mentioned that. And then there was that news, I think in February, maybe it was even late January, that it was going to be shut down. And then like hours later, they were like, hey, that was a mistake. That wasn't true. And so I'm wondering if there was some truth to it being shut down. That was an option they were evaluating. And the people at Toys for Bob were like, hey, just let us go. Like we don't need your money anymore. It's fine. We'll just do our own thing and make our own games. I hope that's what happened. Well, not that I hope they were about to be shut down, but I hope that they were able to get out that way. Not that they were told, like, you're you're leaving. Like, hopefully it was their choice.
Right.
But Dave, what's your thought on this? I think it's my perspective is it's a good thing, but I know a lot of people differ with me.
Yeah, I'm really curious. So, correct me. Microsoft and Activision own the Crash Bandicoot rights at the moment. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. I think
Spyro,
Activision
so-
specifically, which is under Microsoft. Yeah.
So I'd be curious to see what Activision allows to happen with this IP going forward. Obviously, the simple thing to do would be to kind of license it out to Toys for Bob for the foreseeable future. And considering some of the staturing that Microsoft did last year during the acquisition proceedings of wanting to keep so many, X amount of franchises multi-platform, it would make sense that they would, just leave it with Toys for Bob and everybody gets Crash Bandicoot, nothing changes. At the same token, Microsoft has all of these new studios, some of which might need some work to do. So I could also see Microsoft and Activision holding on to Crash Bandicoot and reassigning it to one of their new studios. I don't know which is best for Toys for Bob. I want to say that they've expressed an interest to want to go back to indie games, their indie roots, as they say. But that's tough to pay the bills, especially if you don't have another project that's kind of subsidizing your development of some new indie IP, whatever it might be. So I'm a little bit worried about Toys for Bob long term because, as great as the Crash Bandicoot games that they've worked on have been, I don't know if they really have the chops to kind of stay afloat long. So hopefully they can come out with something quick that is good and can kind of sustain them, or they're given the good graces to continue to work on the Crash Bandicoot series, because I think that's going strong, and I think that would certainly kind of help them going forward. So I'm really curious to see what's going to happen with those franchises now that Toys for Bob is out on its own.
Brandon, along these lines, Crash Bandicoot 4 came out. It did make good sales, but it didn't seem to like change the world by any means. CTR, the Crash Team Racing, came out back in a few years ago now. It was really good, but of course it had the Activision Battle Pass stink on it, which was added in after reviews, which we talked about that before. Last year they released Toys for Bob released Crash Team Rumble, which I'm a gigantic Crash Bandicoot fan, and it basically just came and went. And I'm imagining that's where some of this we got to close down Toys for Bob thing came from. But right. I don't know. Is the Crash Bandicoot IP worth exploring? And if so, imagine you're Microsoft and you're like, okay, we could pay for all this studio's development costs, or we could make them pay for it and let them use our IP for a fee, and we could make money off the studio instead. I don't know. It just seems like it's good for everybody, because if Toys for Bob gets to work on big IP and Microsoft doesn't have to pay for them, hopefully everybody makes money, I guess. But
no, I think this is good. And I think with the recent shift in these big companies and what we've been talking about literally almost the whole episode, is that in a lot of ways, I feel like more companies over the next 10 years are going to realize how much they could benefit from going independently. I think that we've reached such a point to where these companies have shown that they cannot consistently keep your employment or your company alive. And that's not to say that being independent is much different. But at least when you're independent, you die of your own volition and not necessarily because a stockholder or many stockholders or a boardroom decided that your company is not profitable. It's because your product hasn't necessarily stood for itself, which happens in both instances. But I think you understand what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I do think this is a net positive for Toys for Bob. I think that the Crash Bandicoot series is not what comes to my mind instantly when I think about this. Not to say that Crash is behind us, but I feel like we kind of flooded the market with Crash over the past couple of years. I think really what we need to be focusing on, and what Toys for Bob needs to be focusing on, is to almost, and this is a bit dramatic, but catch the lightning in the bottle with another beloved IP. I want to see Spyro get the Crash treatment, and I think that's really what we will see from Toys for Bob. I would love for Microsoft to collaborate with them.
We did get the Reignited trilogy, but yeah, we haven't gotten a new entry.
And that's what I'm saying is they continued the franchise with Crash. I would love a continuation.
Right.
And I swear I even saw something on Twitter. Once again, I can't really substantiate this, but I swear they said something about horns or something on Twitter, which kind of alluded to potentially some more Crash coming, or I'm sorry, excuse me, more Spyro coming. But I wouldn't be able to pull up the tweet even if I wanted to at this point. But I would love to see Spyro from them, and I do think that this is good. Either way, it kind of sounds like they may have been in dangerous waters, whether they were still under the umbrella of Microsoft or not. So to potentially stand on your own 2 feet, maybe with a little bit of help and kind of fight the good fight, I think this is good. I think this is actually good for them.
I was just looking at the Crash Bandicoot release timeline. From 1996 to 2010, there were 18 games, 18 Crash games in 14 years.
Yep.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But we've had the Insane Trilogy, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, Crash 4, Crash Bandicoot on the Run, which was a mobile game, and then Crash Team Rumble, which I barely even knew that game came out. So,
Yeah,
but I would like to see what Toys for Bob. I mean, they've either been a Call of Duty studio, they've been remaking games, whatever. I'm interested to see what they make on their own without any attachments. Granted, yeah, we would love somebody to bring back some old games and old franchises that we remember from childhood and that we want to see get a little love. But I'm always about new IP. I'd love to see what they create on their own.
No, I agree. I agree with you, Ben. And to kind of touch on what Dave said, it's like, how do you fund that, right? Because Microsoft's not going to foot the bill if you're not with them completely. And it's like the best way to do that, in my opinion, bring the IP that everybody loves, make the money that is not guaranteed, but is already an established intellectual property. And then you can branch out once you've made that money to continue your projects. So that's kind of what I see going forward for them.
Chat says we got lucky with Crash 4. We did. That's true. And Rumble has a community in quotes, but it's probably a few hundred people. So that's sad to see. I mean, honestly, when I saw the game announced, I didn't expect a whole lot, but I was hopeful that I would at least know it was releasing rather than coming out to a bit of a whimper, a fart, if you will.
Certainly not a bang.
Number 5. This one's going to lead into what we've been playing to some extent. Balatro. I'm still not sure how to pronounce it. The poker-themed roguelike from Local Thunk has been unexpectedly removed from sale in some countries due to a surprise ratings change. I think it's been mostly reinstituted, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Regardless, publisher PlayStack attributes the issue to Balatro's age rating being raised from 3 to 18 overnight. This change is based on a ratings board mistaken belief that the game contains gambling imagery and materials. PlayStack asserts that Balatro does not promote or involve gambling and expresses disappointment in the ratings decision. They had previously addressed this topic with the ratings board, which initially agreed to classify the game as 3+. However, despite no content changes, the rating was unexpectedly changed again after release. I'll emphasize. The rest of it I had is probably no longer necessary since I think it's back on stores. But have you guys checked out Balatro? I know that last week a lot of people were asking us to. Have you seen it? Have you experienced any of it?
No.
You've not even seen the memes?
No, okay. No. My algorithm has not been tailored.
When I saw that it was a card game, I said no. This is not enough to pry me away from Skull and Bones.
Oh my god.
It's got its grips on you, buddy. It's got the gripper on Dave. Yeah. Ben, tell me about it, because clearly neither one of us have played it. Tell me what you think. Is this fair? Could a 3-year-old play this? Would they get addicted to gambling? Would they be at the slot machines at the age of 4, pulling and watching the fucking cherries roll round and round? Would it happen, Ben? Give me your honest take.
I think, we'll move into what we've been playing. So Balatro is poker.
It's not starting off good.
And the thing everyone says about it is that it's super addicting.
All right.
Okay, so yes, I guess you could quantify it as gambling if you wanted to. But so it's poker, but it's got a lot of it's a roguelike. It's got a lot of different. You have to go through a variety of stages, and as you go through these stages, you get different Joker cards, and these Joker cards can modify your scoring in a lot of different ways. And there are so many. I haven't even uncovered all of them because you unlock them through progression. So basically, you're playing a hand of poker, but you have a bunch of different modifiers, and then you have bosses that can come out and like screw up your modifiers and screw up the way you play the game. It's one of those games where we use this phrase a lot, but it's one of those one more game kind of things where you finish a round, you have a after you go through 3 levels, you up the ante, and then you have to achieve a different score every time in order to progress to the next round. And as I mentioned, there are different modifier cards that come out. There are not only modifiers with the scoring, but also modifiers with how cards act and how different things will progress. And it's very simple. It's literally just it's a card game, but it's based on this, tried and true principle of poker that many people already know the rules to. Now, I think Balatro is unique in the sense that even if you don't know or like poker, if you learn the rules of the game, you'll be just fine. But it's a roguelike. So you want to keep going back. You want to try to up your score. And as you progress, you unlock new decks, you unlock new abilities, et cetera, et cetera. Many things are reset every time you restart the game. But I've probably got 3.5 to 4 hours in this so far. I just picked it up yesterday or day before, maybe. I can't remember. But either way, I'm loving it. And I've only played it on my PC. I'm really thinking it's going to be a great game for Steam Deck or a handheld in some way. I think right now it's on PlayStation, Switch, Xbox, and Steam. So that's a really good start for it, of course. And it's already sold I saw the numbers. I can't remember what they were, but it's sold an insane amount already. But Balatro is, yes, I can understand the gambling aspect, but only because you're playing with cards and you're playing poker. And that's addictive. There's no microtransactions. I can't find any if there are. So I don't think it's listed or anything. There's no microtransactions. I don't think they're promoting gambling. It's no more of a gambling game than Slay the Spire, in my opinion. It's just very straightforward and fun, in my estimation. So I know neither of you said you were interested in card games, but you both like roguelikes. No, I think Dave likes roguelikes more than Brandon, but you've both at least experimented with them. So maybe it's not for you if you're not a card game fan or you're anti-card game, but it's $15.
That's what I was going to ask you. What's the price tag?
It's $15. So it's one of those, even if I don't like it, if I get a couple hours of enjoyment out of it, it's probably worth the price. I've paid 60 or 70 for way less. Dave played 90 loonies for Skull and Bones. I mean, he's actually asking for people to hurt him with games. So, but no, I think it's a lot of fun. It's so simple, but the actual gameplay loop is pretty complex because as you're playing different hands, you can play a regular poker hand and you can score some points, but you're not going to make it very far unless you're using the modifiers, the Joker cards and other cards to really ramp up your score. So let's just say, for example, if I play two pair of cards in a poker hand, usually is a good hand. There's, in poker, there's varying degrees of how cards work, but if I play two pair, it's a decent hand. But in Balatro, if you play a Joker, a certain Joker that increases your modifier, your scoring modifier for a two pair, then you're going to get extra points. If you've got another Joker card that makes it so that any hearts that you play get a different modifier, then you're not only going to have the two pair modifier, but you're also going to have the hearts modifier. And then you get another one that if you play an 8, you get an extra modifier for. So there's so many levels to it. And of course, the further you go, the more you unlock, and you can choose which Joker cards you're using at different points. So there's a lot of depth there, but on its face, it's such a familiar concept to so many millions of people that I understand why it's a success. And I think the roguelike elements are what make it the one more game kind of got to go. So it's a lot of fun. I would definitely recommend it if you do not absolutely hate card games. That's my recommendation. And if you do absolutely hate card games, watch 10 minutes of it. And maybe you'll realize it's not as much a card game as it is a roguelike. That's my selling point. Now, Dave, I've got another game to talk about, which I'll talk about later. But Alex Dice Twice brings up in the chat Dave paid for the privilege of the first quadruple A game ever. I want to hear more about your time this week with Skull and Bones.
Sure. Before I get into that, while you were talking about Balatro being on PlayStation, I open up the app and I go to search, and I was just I was aware of this, but it was just so weird to see. In the trending games on the PlayStation app, number one is Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's so weird to see. Yeah, so it is a quadruple A game, fellas, and I've been telling you, and I duped everybody into failing one of my resolutions last year, so I could play this game and make it sound like I was the victim and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I'm pushing 30 hours into the game, and I'm not done the campaign yet, but I'm still having a great time. I did this. There's been a lot of like just cool moments. I did this mission where I had to go to like the settlement and I had to turn in this trader's head of this, this ship that I had sunk, and he was a trader and stuff, and I was basically sending his head to the people who sent him so they would know not to fuck with us. And it's crazy. So you turn in this head, and then your mission objective changes to get away before they see the head. And I'm like, okay, so I turn my stern to the land and then I just start driving away. But then I'm like, I realize that all this fog has kicked in and I can't actually see what's in front of me. And then all of a sudden I see 6 red flares just shoot up from behind the fog. And like, there's all these enemy ships just waiting for me. It's a fucking epic moment. And I got out of it. But yeah, just a lot of cool stuff like that. I'm looking forward to finishing the campaign because there's some other stuff I want to play, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be going back to this and doing some of the end game stuff just because like I upgraded my ship again and I'm now driving the or captaining the HMS Handsome Feet as everybody asked for. Yeah, and I'm experimenting with some new weapons like bombards and mortars, and they really kind of changed the way you can go into battle. Before I was using pretty much everything that was cannon based. So yeah, still having a great time. Nothing more new to say about that. Played a little bit more Deep Rock Survivor.
Wait.
Sorry, go ahead.
What you said was, I'm looking forward to finishing the campaign because there's other stuff I want to play. But what I heard was, I can't wait to be done with Skull and Bones. Can you confirm that statement for me?
No.
Okay.
My statement was my statement. I'm looking forward to finishing the campaign so I can check out some other stuff because there's a lot of stuff I want to play that's going on sale and stuff.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I suspect I will return to this after. A little break because it's just fun to play. It's fun to play.
I will say it is unappealing to me, but also there's a part of it that's appealing to me. For all of that, I have to look at that game and be like, there is a lot of value. If you're having fun, there's a lot of value there for a full price game. If you're not having fun, it's real bad.
I don't know if this is a good way to go into buying games, but when I pay full price for a game, I want a solid 40 hours out of it. That's just kind of my guideline. That's what I like to get out of it. And once I have that, then I feel good about moving away from it. And if I never play it again, then that's fine. But yeah, and I think I'll easily get there with Skull and Bones. And again, it just kind of stings that if I put it down and pick it up again in a couple months, like I have to have PS Plus and I don't want to have to do that. So but yeah, other than that, it's a good time. I'm liking it.
PC, baby. PC.
Yeah, there you go.
Dave, tell me about Deep Rock Survivor.
I finally unlocked the last biome. I haven't played it yet just because I wanted to go back to the first 2 and play it on higher hazard levels, which really make things difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think once you kind of get through the first 3 biomes, there's like 3 or 4 different hazard levels for you to work through, so like you could play this game for a long time. I unlocked the last class I had, which was the driller. I haven't used them yet though because I'm just enjoying playing the gunner so much. So yeah, this is again, it's one of those, I could play this game for 20 minutes. This is odd, but I have to point this out. You can pause this game.
Yeah.
You might be like, what? And like, why is that a plus? And it's just, I feel like there's been a lot of games that I've been playing as of late that I can't pause. And explaining that to my wife
Yeah.
is difficult. So it's nice to have
with
a game
the
that,
with the toddler or the newborn, really. Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
it's nice to have a game that you can pause because I can literally finish a run 3 hours later or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, just wanted to shout that out because a lot of games you can't pause these days.
Yeah. It is kind of a crazy thought.
Mhm.
Most of the games I'm playing, well, not right now, but most of the time, like you can't pause them. That's true. And they're not even like online games. It's just they're not possible.
Yeah.
Brandon,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about what you've been playing this week.
Oh man, dude, I'm playing the same thing I was playing last week, so I won't spend too much time. I won't belabor what I've already talked about for maybe 3 weeks now at this point. But playing Helldivers, I'm still spreading the good word. One of my buddies, Alec, shout out to Alec. He finally picked it up and he said, "Man, I get it. I get it. I wish I would have got it sooner." And I said, "Man, I'm telling you, for democracy, buddy. That's all I
It's
got
for
to say.
democracy,
It
really.
is
Yeah.
for democracy."
Yeah.
He's lucky he hasn't been charged with high treason for not buying it sooner. But no, it's been great. I'm still having a good time. Honestly, I'm slowing down a tiny bit. I'm still having a lot of fun, but I put like between 50 and 60 hours in a couple weeks. So it's kind of reached the point where I'm not really like dying to play. But I've got back into Elden Ring again, but this time on a different platform. I was playing a little bit on PS5 the week that Ben was away. But I'm getting back into it. It's kind of nice to just sit on the couch and mess around. And with the DLC coming out, I've had the hard decision of deciding whether I'm going to buy it on PC first or PS5 first. And my gut was right. I'm going to buy it on PS5.
Yeah.
The vast majority, like 2 or 3 times over of my hours on that game are on the PS5. And so I'm probably just going to keep it that way for now.
Yeah.
I'll likely end up purchasing it again on PC, especially if what I assume to be true, the mod will carry over in some fashion at some point to be able to play the seamless co-op. So I'm sure at some point that will be fun to dip into on PC as well. So aside from that, not a whole lot, boys. Not a whole lot.
Nice. I'm also still playing Helldivers 2, although a lot less. Not because I'm enjoying it less, but because Rebirth is out, which I'll talk about in a
Right.
second. But
Yes.
Helldivers 2, it still continues just to be good, dumb fun. I mean, yeah, there's strategy. Yeah, there's, harrowing moments and you're getting rocked by the bugs or the robots. But overall, like, you're just dropping in with the boys and you're saving democracy. You're spreading liberty everywhere you go. And it just feels good. The game feels great. I know there's problems with it. I know there's bugs, both in the game and with the
Of course.
game.
And there's
Yeah.
robots.
And there's robots. But I just, every time I turn it on, I'm just having fun. And that's really the most important thing to me, is just to have fun with the game. It doesn't matter. I've been playing Sea of Thieves. I've played 3,500 hours of Sea of Thieves. If bugs bothered me, I wouldn't be playing that game anymore. So that game is the worst game I've ever played with bugs that's got an actual sustainable presence. Get ready, PlayStation fans. It's about to get wild up in here, okay? Because you've never experienced a game with such a vibrant community and so many bugs at the same time. Anyway, so I'm loving Helldivers 2, but I've been playing Rebirth. And if you guys remember, I just finished up playing Remake a few months ago, week ago, a couple weeks ago, whatever. And Rebirth came out, and I don't even know where to start because every inch of this game is just making me feel happy. And I don't know how to describe it other than to say that. The setting is so like familiar yet very distant. Like it's a totally different environment, but it just feels like I was just right there back in 1998 or 9, whenever I first played the game. And when I first played the original. The changes they're making to the story along the way are really well done. I think that they are respectful of the history of the game, and I'm not going to go into spoilers or anything by any means, but the history of the game is there while still bringing in new things. The way that they have expanded upon the characters we've always known and loved from Final Fantasy VII is really respectful as well, where they're just making them more lovable and making you feel even more connected to them than in the past. And the fact that I was a little worried about this game at first, when I first heard about this, is that you go into basically the second chapter of this game and it's open world. which is awesome in one way, and in another way, you could understand why you wouldn't want that in a Final Fantasy game. But the nice part about it, and I am someone who wants to get every morsel out of this game that I possibly can. So I am 100%ing everything before I move on to the next thing. I am going through and collecting everything possible, checking off all the boxes. That's what I want to do. I want to spend as much time in this story for the first time as I can. But the beautiful thing is that if you don't want to do that, as with many open world games, you don't have to. You can mainline it if you prefer, and you don't have to go around and do all the little assignments and collect things, and etc. And you'll still have a great time. Now I'm in chapter 4. I'm about a little over 20 hours into it, and I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface yet on this game. From what I understand, if you wanted to platinum this game, which I don't know that I will, although I'm probably going to end the story with all but a few trophies, it looks like, that I'll have to go back and do, hard mode to finish. But I want to spend as many hours as I can, and it looks like if you want to platinum the game, you need about 200 hours. I don't know that I'll spend that much time in it, but I don't see any reason to rush this game for me, because I'm enjoying it. I really am. And I think I've substantially blocked myself against spoilers for now. As more people beat the game, I'm sure that will become harder and harder to do, to dodge those. But for right now, I'm having a great time. I don't feel any pressure. And it's been a long time since I just played a game without feeling the need to move on. Normally, after this many hours in the open world of any game, I'm like, okay, I just want to see what the next story piece is. But at this point, and granted, I'm only 20 hours in, but at this point, I'm just like, you know what? It'll happen when it happens. Right. I'll get to the next thing. I don't care. I care more about the journey than I do about the actual progression. So it's a treat. It's a treat.
Would you say that the less linear progression is a detractor, or?
I think it depends on your gaming style.
Okay.
For me, it's not a detractor. Now, don't get me wrong. If you don't want to do all the open world stuff, the game is probably very linear. You move from A to B and go to C.
That's right.
But for me, so basically, okay, you walk. I'm not going to talk about anything specific, but you walk through a doorway that was you're linear up to this point. You walk through a doorway, and it's like, hey, now you can do whatever you want. And if you wanted to, you could take a straight path to the next doorway,
right,
and go to the next story beat.
Sure.
But if you don't want to, you've got this much to play. As much as you can see or experience to play.
I guess it was more a question of sometimes, and I think you kind of answered this actually, but sometimes open world games can feel diluted by comparison. Not all. Many open world games are good, but many struggle in the open world setting, and they almost feel less for that reason. Have you felt that way based off of the first one to the second one here?
No, I don't think so. As a matter of fact, there were points in the first one where I was like, I kind of just want to explore. In Remake, I was like, I kind of just want to explore this town. And you could do that, but there's not a lot there to explore. I kind of want to see what this environment's like, but there's nothing I just got to go to the next place.
Exactly.
And this one, you don't have that pressure. At least not yet. Maybe that happens more and later in the game. But I think there are several more. I'm in the second open world section now, and I'm completing everything in it. And from my understanding, there's more of those sections as well. Now, what I will say, the only disadvantage to that is in the first open world section, the first area that you have more leeway to just roam around. There's a whole bunch of sets of different things you got to do and you got to complete. And then you go through another part, and then you go into the second open world section, and you're like, okay, cool, this is a whole new environment. But guess what? All the tasks you have to perform, pretty much exactly the same. Varying levels of difficulty. There's some slight nuances to them. Some of them are, side missions and stuff that have a little bit more, a little difference to them. But as far as totally different, no. They're pretty similar.
Okay.
But the game is really good at the environmental storytelling. Everything you come across, every time you pass something, every time you go on a side quest, the character who's pushing the side quest forward, you're getting a whole bunch of background from them and more depth into their characters, which was definitely something that was missing from the original Final Fantasy VII. Of course, it's a product of its time at this point, but I feel like you're getting I'm getting more insight into Barrett's background and current feelings in some of these side missions than I ever thought possible because of the way the first game progressed. You barely even get to know some of the characters. So it's a treat.
I've been watching people play this on Twitch. Several different people play it on Twitch since it launched, and I feel like every time I've watched someone, they're playing a mini game.
Yeah, there are a lot of mini games.
Like a lot, because every time I don't think I've seen the same mini game twice.
Okay.
I keep checking the little thing at the bottom. I was like, is this Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or is this Raid Shadow Legends? Because it's like,
Yeah.
I can't tell.
There are a few different mini games that I've come across so far. I assume there's more of those in the future. I will say, without giving spoilers, there's one side mission that's like the big ticket side mission of the second open world. That the mini game that you played during that to progress that has some background in Remake, in Integrate specifically, and the way they do it is a total nostalgia trip. Like it feels. I'll talk about it with you guys after the show if you want. But for people who don't want spoilers, I don't want to, because when I started that side mission, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing.
I think some of the complaints about Remake that I recall is there was a lot of padding. Do you agree with that? And if so,
there was padding at the beginning of Remake.
At the beginning, okay. Because I mean, they've taken a game and split it into 3 parts so they could sell a remake 3 times, right?
Yeah. Well, normally, maybe I'm being blinded a little bit by my bias for this game. That's entirely possible, but I feel like normally I would agree with that take that they split it up to sell more. But with this, I feel like they split it up to make it better, and that's not normally how I feel. Everything about this game feels better and feels more fleshed out. So, yeah, there's definitely padding there. And in the first game, there was a lot of padding. You know, your first couple hours of the game, you're looking for cats to progress the main story. That kind of sucked. But in this game, I don't feel like the train's here. In this game, I don't feel like you have that same kind of padding. There's padding, and there's certainly optional padding if you want it, but I don't feel like it's lost. Like it loses the purpose, I guess. Again, I could have a lot of bias there. It's entirely possible, but that's my feeling on it. And that's it. That's all I've been playing. That's all we've been playing. That's all the news we got for this week. Good news, bad news, all around.
Mixed bag.
Mixed bag.
Mixed bag.
Don't forget to go over to patreon.com/handsomephantom. Support us there for as little as $1 a month, even if you're not interested in the audio feeds. We appreciate everybody who supports us there. Helps us keep the show going. Hang out on Discord with us at handsomephantom.com/Discord. Free. You don't have to be a member, or you don't have to be a Patreon member to sign up. Come hang out with us. We'll talk about feet and stuff, probably.
Some of us will talk about
some
feet.
of us will talk about it.
Feetfinder.com/handsomephantom.
That's right.
Go check us out.
What if that existed? Oh my god.
I fucking hope not, boys.
That's all we got. We'll stick around just for a few minutes to talk about the name of the show, but for audio listeners, we'll see you later. All right, boys. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
What do we got for a name? The name-eo. Also, I think X/Twitter must have been it's glitching out because it currently says I have 142 viewers, but I think that's people who have actually like scrolled past it.
So it steadily went up the whole time.
Yeah, it's showing up on StreamYard that way. So
right,
yeah, better emulator than never. I'll go with it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Poot.
Poot. Excellent as always.
Beautiful. What a beautiful name.
And we got away from the episode without anybody saying feet ? Thank you.
Yeah, that's what happens when the worst of us aren't here, you know?
Can I ask a random unrelated question?
I guess.
I've been hearing a lot of noise about this Halo TV show, season 2. Have you guys watched this at all? No?
No, man.
Seen this? Have you heard about this?
No.
I watched the first one. And no need to watch the second one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have heard mixed things. I've heard mostly positive things about the second season, but I heard mostly negative things about the first. So I don't really know how to feel about that. I feel like how can you reasonably build on ground that is already soiled? But I mean, hey, I'm willing to give it a shot. It's just definitely not at the top of my priority list.
Got it. Cool. Thanks.
I have no interest in it. Sorry.
Dude, how's Tifa been? God damn, I want to play that game just to watch her.
I got to end the show now. I got things to do.
Stellar Blade, man.
Coward.
Old news.
Coward.
Great. Tifa's great, as always. I don't understand anybody
you
who
would be.
participates in the debate of who's the best girl in
Dude,
Final Fantasy VII because
I was literally
It's
just
Tifa.
talking. I was just fucking talking to Dustin about this. I said, this isn't even an option. This is like, would you rather the 94 Buick or would you or would you rather the 2012 Buick? I mean, come on, boys. No, who am I kidding? I just insulted Tifa. She's the 2024 Buick, boys. Top of the line.
why she got to be a
Comparing
Buick,
her,
though?
yeah. What are you doing, man?
Dude, Buicks are nice, buddy.
They are nice. That's true. What up, Adakon? How you doing? We're actually heading out here pretty soon, but I appreciate you popping by.
Thanks for saying hello. We love
Funny
that.
you
Greetings
mentioned
and
Tifa.
hello. Funny you mentioned Tifa. Why is that?
Poot's been thinking about her all day.
Hoots, I don't.
Stellar Blade, boys. Tifa's
Can
old
you blame
news.
him? Dude, that Stellar Blade might be the only thing that takes my attention away from Tifa at this point. I think I might be ruined. I think I might be ruined, boys.
You're just Randy from South Park.
She's more like a brand new Corvette. You're right. I apologize. Top of the line.
True.
V8 Hellcat.
She gives me Honda S2000 vibes.
Oh my god.
Ooh, the goat. The goat. Oh, truly one of the goats. You're right, Dave.
Buick.
All right, boys. Thanks, chat. We'll see you later.